All right, we're back after some time off, but I've decided to resume these studio videos. So today we're here with a good buddy of mine, Anthony Brant, at his home, where you mix.
Nice to see you, Josh. Yes, sir. This is the spot.
Yeah, we met last year.
Yeah.
It's felt like it's been a long time.
Yeah, we've done a couple projects too. So
yeah, we haven't in a while. We need to start collaborating again.
We will.
Yes,
absolutely.
we will. But you hit me up on Instagram.
Yeah, Instagram. Yeah. It's the power of technology these days.
Way of the future.
Yeah, way of the future.
But you hit me up on Instagram. I think you just said something like, hey, we have a lot of mutual friends, you know, introduced yourself. And I remember the first thing that I thought was pretty hilarious was like you went into like a sales pitch, which I think I've given you crap for in the past. I was just like, oh, cool. And then you're like, hey, man, come down to the studio, like $20 an hour for a tour. And I was like, I ain't got time for that. But then like we continued to talk, and I think I invited you over to my place. But I still think I went to your place first at the time. But yeah, after we like talked a little bit more and we actually met in person, we like hit it off right away.
Yeah.
And I think, we both kind of realized that it was cool. It was all cool.
All cool, man. No sales.
But I get it. You know, I do get it. Like it's always a bit odd, you know, introducing yourself to somebody new in the industry and what have you. First off, you never know, you know, what kind of person they're going to be.
Right.
But I think once we both realized that we were just two guys that like to nerd out about gear and recording and mixing, especially mixing.
Yep.
It all kind of calmed down and relaxed from there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely, man.
So, one of the things that we kind of definitely hit it off right away on was mixing, because I know that you like to think of yourself as a mixer.
Yeah.
And that's the aspect that you love the most of the whole process, which is a bit different from me because I'm coming from where my favorite part of the process is tracking. But I think that's most rock people's opinion, is tracking is fun. But for you, what makes mixing like the thing?
You know, I really like how, you know, how much like creative expression you can have like mixing, and ultimately I think you're responsible for how the song like is portrayed, essentially. Like you're basically showcasing the energy of an artist in a certain way that makes everybody feel exactly what the artist was trying to say, essentially. And so I really like being a part of that kind of finalizing process. I mean, obviously there's mastering for finalizing, but for me, you're kind of cementing the sound of what everybody in the project was going for. And I like that, and it's kind of turned me into a producer just by, you know, like the nature of it is just sometimes, you know, a track just won't quite work to portray something, and it's kind of like, okay, you know, rather than trying to beat this to death, like we can talk about like redoing something, or maybe like what if we, you know, reamped it or stuff like that to like really you know, help with that mix and stuff like that. So that's why I'd say I really like it, is just really helping, you know, finalize the song and the intention. It's like it's something that I feel just comes naturally to me, and I enjoy it. So.
Right. I've definitely learned a lot from just our discussions about the philosophies, if you will, about mixing. Because one of the biggest differences between you and I is the fact that I tend to be very hands-off in mixing, almost to a fault. And which is why I thought it was cool that you had agreed to mix 2 of the tracks from the latest Toso album that I was working on. Because I sent you 2 of the hardest ones, really. One of them was, you know, a noise track, an 8-minute, longest track on the album, just noise track, really.
Yep.
But I immediately thought, I was like, man, like, I can probably do an okay job at this, but I think Tony, as you once put it in the past, your spaghetti against a wall technique, I was like, I think that'll like really nail this song. Because I mean, it was just a bunch of wild, crazy, it was Toso being Toso at their most Toso-ness.
Sure.
You know?
Yeah.
And I loved it. I love what you did. You know, it definitely made that track like something else that I didn't know was there.
Yeah.
Just because I was so used to hearing just a bunch of tracks
Yeah.
of just nonsense.
That's a good point, and that's another reason why I like mixing especially too, because not only are you showcasing what the artist's intention was, but a lot of times you have the opportunity to throw those curveballs in there that people who've been spending so much time on the song, it just didn't occur to them that this is in there, this is and so kind of pulling some of that stuff out it brings me joy.
And I think the band had a great time. They were a little hesitant at first just because they didn't know. They were like, oh, you're gonna throw one of the tracks that we care about a lot to somebody else, and I was like, well, yeah, but trust me, like it's gonna be better than what I could do. And then the other one that I had sent you, the other challenge was the track that we had recorded, I think, quite literally a year before the rest of the album.
Right.
Because the way that album worked, I think we tracked that first song in the beginning of 2016, and then I didn't hear a peep out of those guys until we tracked the rest of the album in 2017. So I was like, man, it's going to be hard to get that track to sound like we did it all in one go. But I was like, whatever, screw it, I'm just going to send it to Tony, he's going to do his thing. And it'll just be that.
Yeah.
And that's the one that they made a video for.
Sweet.
I thought was really cool.
Awesome. I didn't even know that. So that's great.
That's the one that came out with the video.
Cool.
But yeah, I thought it was cool working with you on that and just, kind of letting it go. And I had complete trust that it would be something that I'd like.
Awesome.
And enjoyed, and the band enjoyed it, and I think it worked out for everyone's benefit in the end.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm a big believer in collaboration, and like I try not to wear too many hats so that, like everyone's focused on one certain thing, and I think that's how we make the best products is, when we collaborate, and that's where I really enjoy that collaboration. Yeah.
It offers clarity. It definitely offers clarity, and you can kind of, it's kind of like duh that it offers clarity, but you forget, I think, when you get stuck being forced to kind of wear, or seemingly forced to wear all those hats.
Sure. Yeah.
At least for me, anyways. Like most of the time, working with local bands here in Phoenix is they expect you to do everything, even up to the point of mastering.
Right.
Which is another indirect tie we have. We both like to use John Weil, who's now up in Seattle. But
Fuzzy Walls Mastering.
Fuzzy Walls Mastering. But I every single project that I start and get into, it's usually expected that I do everything, which is a bit of a bummer because it definitely offers a lot of clarity. Like the first time you and I, just for fun, mixed a song where you were driving the session, and I was just sitting in the back. Kind of, doing like the Rick Rubin thing where I was just like sitting there and I was like, I don't like that.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, cool. Like you weren't offended.
Yeah.
There wasn't any ego was nowhere in the room. It was just like, oh yeah, you're right, dude. Let's try that. Right. And I thought I was like, this is fun because it's like, I'm not sitting here worrying about EQ curves and compression. I'm just listening to the song.
Right.
And how it makes me feel.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's part of the collaboration that I think and ties into clarity what you're saying when you have that like focus on kind of one task. It really allows you to just focus and get to the core of like what ultimately like it comes down to the listener's experience. So like if you're too wrapped up in the EQ curves and stuff like that, you don't have enough processing power up here, at least I don't, to be able to think about the song as a listener.
Right.
It's kind of one or the other to me, and and it's like depending on the song, it's like I'm happy to play either role, but as long as we define the roles, then then it's good, and that's where the collaborative effort is really it's an important part to me, I think, but mostly just because everything I have worked on by myself and not collabed with people has been my least favorite work that I've worked on. So it's just evidence and proof to me that it's like, that's key. But yeah.
No, absolutely. And just to kind of drive the point a little further, it definitely kind of revitalized the idea, because I feel like when I first started out and I didn't really know much about anything, I was mixing for feel more than I was mixing for sonics. And I still enjoy a lot of mixes that I had, or, recordings that I'd done, 2 years into me doing this, 3 years into me doing this, because there's a charm to the fact that I was like, yeah, like, technically we can focus on like the bass sound or the guitar sound, and I can rip it apart and be like, it's not that great. But when I listened to the whole track, I was like, it kind of works with the track. Like it's a cool, I'm proud of this mix that I did.
Yeah.
Not really knowing anything, because I was mixing for like the feel of the song and not freaking out about like, oh, does it all sound
Right.
professional?
Right.
Kind of thing. And it was cool, kind of like just getting like, that's what it's about.
Yeah.
You know, is like how does the song feel? How do you react to it as a listener, like you're saying?
Right. Right.
And going through that.
Yeah. No. Absolutely.
Something else I learned about you quite quickly was that you, also to bring John back into the mix, you interned or apprenticed under John at Robin Wilson's old place, Uranus, right?
Uranus.
Uranus.
You just say it. Don't even.
Just commit. Commit. Uranus.
Yeah. Uranus.
Yeah, which that's the last studio that I ever recorded at as a musician. I was sad to see that place go.
Me as well.
Yeah, it was a cool. I can barely remember it, but yeah, that was I think in 2010. Before I had like committed fully, because I was recording in 2010, but I hadn't like committed to it quite fully yet. But I was still in a band in 2010, and that was the last place we recorded. And we didn't record with John. We recorded with another person who was working kind of as John's assistant at the time, Jeremy. But yeah, I really had a lot of fun at that place. So it was cool to hear that you had also spent a couple years there.
Yeah.
Working there.
Yeah, that place was my first look at or kind of introduction to a hybrid studio, and it really inspired me to go like see what like the digital side of things can offer, because I went to an audio school, and we learned all analog, and we learned everything the analog way, and that was the picture of this is what studios are. So when I showed up at Uranus, it was like, that's not how we do things here. You know, I remember having a little notepad, and they taught us in school of like what questions to ask about how to route signal through the console. And so I showed up with this thing, and I had all these questions, and I go to ask him, and he's like, no, it's different. Or, you know, and so once I learned that and how it all kind of, it's been a long time like trying to figure out, you know, what's going on behind the gear, like how's it all hooked together, like how's the flow of all this work and everything like that, and how, you know, how does he use like summing mixing and all this stuff, and learning that way. And it opened my eyes to like so many different avenues of where you can take your studio setup, and it's kind of, it's come a long way to this small rig that fits in my pocket here, and I like it this way. Everything's small and compact, but it does a lot because there's, you know, so many options now with the digital like hybrid way. But that was my first, you know, awakening into like hybrid studios, and I couldn't go back the other way. I just, you know, unless I somehow get rich one day, then yes, then it'll be all analog.
They didn't even have a console there, did they?
We had a Neve sidecar.
Right, you had the little, it was like a BCM type style thing.
Yeah, it was the Royston sidecar. I forget the exact model. It was beat up to hell. Two-band EQ, very kind of noisy pots, but it had so much vibe. It was really cool. We used the preamps on that thing a lot. And
where'd that thing go? Who has it now?
Man, I don't know. It was sold, and I don't know who picked it up, but they're lucky. Either that, or they have a headache of repairs ahead of them.
Probably
it was beat up.
Probably both. I remember, because I was to name drop another person that will probably show up in these videos somewhat soon, is Curtis over at STEM. I remember I was talking to him about it too, and he's like, "Yeah, I really wanted that thing, but he told me where it went. I don't remember, but he's like, somebody else had already made a claim to it and had gone somewhere else." But yeah, you know, old analog gear, that's just kind of what it is. You know, it's a labor of love of keeping it going.
Yeah, it's like keeping an old car. You know, I buy new cars because I don't know anything about cars, and I don't like to go to the car shop to get it repaired every month. I'd rather have a new car and have that all, you know, like service, so that there's no issues, no break, or, you know, no breaks in the flow. Like using this as an analogy, you know, like I
Right.
gotta get to work. I got the car's gonna drive. It's not
Totally,
gonna break down,
totally.
you know. So it's like more important to me to have something that works, you know, the same way every time, and it's consistent. So that's
I'm in a bit of an in between limbo world, whereas like I can't truly say that I have the knowledge and ability to keep everything that I currently own running on my own. But I fancy myself that I can, which is definitely a headache in itself sometimes. But I do admire, because I probably should abandon a lot of it and just kind of condense down to a setup like what you're doing, which is another pretty monumental difference between you and I, is you're entirely in the box.
yeah,
When it comes to mixing, I mean, this,
Right.
like you said, you've got a system
Yeah.
you can fit in your pocket,
Right.
or a backpack, mind you, and take
Yes.
wherever. Whereas me, not so much.
right,
But I think we both agree that workflow is still the most important thing.
absolutely,
And that's where we still kind of get along with the whole, like, you know, it's okay that you do it this way, and it's okay that I do it my
Yeah.
way,
right,
because it's
It
just
works.
Yeah, it's what we are comfortable on, and but to go back, like, you know, before I met you, I admittedly did kind of have an animosity towards mixing in the box, just because I'd had done it for so long based on necessity, because I just didn't have the money to afford the stuff that I
right,
wanted.
right,
And I remember mixing would take me just days to get to a point where I was happy,
sure,
you know? And then as soon as I did start incorporating analog gear, mixes started taking like hours,
right,
you know?
right,
And I, of course, in my infinite wisdom, was like, oh, it's because plugins and computers and nah, and you know.
yeah,
But then I met you, and you would send me a mix, and I didn't know. You just sent me a mix. I was like, hey, man, this sounds really good.
Yeah.
You know, like, what are you using? What'd you do? And he's like, oh, just, you know, UAD plugins,
Mm-hmm.
all in the box,
yeah,
kind of thing. And I was like, this sounds like it was done on a console.
yeah,
You know, like it has the depth, it had the space, it had everything. And I was like, this is really good. So it's definitely, and I remember like the first time we were hanging out at Epicenter, which is a place you used to look over. I have notes, and I probably still have them in my phone. Like I was like writing down, I was like, this plugin is cool.
yeah.
Check it out.
Yeah, I tend to try to find plugins that, you know, aren't common, I guess, and I like weird ones that people don't have, you know, like I feel like at this point everybody has Waves plugins and,
Yeah.
you know,
Guilty.
UAD too. I mean, UAD stuff is fantastic, but I mean, at this point, like everyone has access to all that stuff. But I've been really lately getting into the Kush audio plugins and Sli-Fi and
Sli-Fi. That's a
yeah,
good one. I don't know anything about that one.
Oh man, it's good stuff. It's
Mm-hmm.
some like API modeled stuff in there and some cool distortions and yeah, I love it. I love that stuff. Because to me, you know, you use that kind of stuff and it just when it's unique, it sounds like something you haven't heard before. So it's exciting and it's like, oh, this is cool. This is like unique and. I think that's super important because in the end of the day, it's like every plugin pretty much has that digital footprint. So if someone has it, they have that exact sound, whereas in analog, you could have two of the same compressors, but they're going to sound different just because of the nature of
Right.
you know, the circuitry and whatnot. That doesn't really exist in the digital world. So you got to find ways to keep it creative and interesting and unique, you know. And but yeah, that's my philosophy on the plugins, I'd say. Like, just find unique ones.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And the idea of stack, that was another thing that I'd learned too, because in the analog world, you can do pretty heavy-handed stuff with like a box or two, and then that's your chain.
Right.
And then like in analog, if you were to stack, like if you were to run a signal like a vocal into like 5 different things, you're going to have obviously degradation, which will probably be pleasant for whatever reasons, or maybe not.
Sure.
But you know, there's definitely like a pretty heavy con to running a signal into that many analog boxes. You know, you only really need like 1 or 2.
Right.
But with plugins, something that I also just kind of like didn't put the common sense together was you don't have that with plugins.
Yeah.
But because you don't have that with plugins, and because you don't have the randomness of analog with plugins, I didn't put 2 and 2 together and be like, what if I just do a bunch of little movements with a bunch,
Yeah.
as opposed to trying to do the same amount of work with my plug-in 1176 that I do with my real 1176,
Right.
you know, kind of thing, which you cannot do.
Absolutely. It's super important, and it also ties into the uniqueness of the sound you're making because, you know, again, like everyone has that plugin, but if you're using the 76 on a vocal, you know, people know what the CLA 76 is on the vocal, but if you add like 3 or 4 different random ones, like all of a sudden you've made this vocal sound, and it's not about the plugins themselves, and you come up with something unique that's the draw to me is that just uniqueness to like, you know, you may have the same plugin, but I used it in this combination in these different ways, and it made this sound, and
Right.
that's what's coming out of the speakers. So that's what's important. So yeah.
And I really admired your detachment to things too, because once again, to go back to those handful of sessions we did where I was just listening while you did stuff, and I would, you know, say that's cool or that's
Yeah.
not cool, but I really liked how you were like, let's try this out. And you were like really stoked on the idea that it was going to work, but then as soon as it worked, you're like, nah, screw that. Let's, you know, like it was like whatever, you know.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
definitely know, like as an analog guy, I'm guilty of favoring certain things for certain sources, and if it doesn't work right away, I'm like, hold up, you know, let me get it to work.
Right.
As opposed to like just saying like, well, just don't use it today or whatever.
Yeah.
And just another kind of little thing that I learned from working with you is like picking up like the power of detachment.
Yeah.
Of just anything, you know, like it doesn't have to be the same all the time. And I know, I'm sure just like me, you have some things that you start off with like, this is my go-to chain, but it's okay if half of it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Or it's okay if all of it doesn't work. You
Right.
know, I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
And just seeing that happen, you know, like just the randomness of, embracing the randomness of like, whatever gets there.
Exactly. Whatever gets there, and you know, ultimately to me, whatever like surprises me and makes me happy, and it's like, whoa, I just made that sound, you know. So yeah, definitely. I think detachament's huge to that. Like, you know, it's huge to me. Even like that comes from, you know, I'm a musician myself, and like from songwriting. I remember years ago I started a project with myself where every Wednesday I would create a song in 24 hours, and I would write it, record it, mix it, master it, and put it online in one day. And I did 15 weeks, so I made 15 songs. I wanted to go a whole year, but I had a job and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it just taught me the importance of detachment, because I couldn't get held up on things. If you're going to finish something that quickly and you know, limiting yourself like that, you don't hear it as a listener. You know, if you listen to it so much and you get so hung up on it, you're diving deeper into the song than any listener would. And so to me, the quickest way you can kind of get it there and get it done and kind of get it thrown in there, the sooner you can be on the other end listening to it as a listener. And so I always try to have that detachment so that I can quickly get to that point, you know, to where I can detach and I can listen to it as a listener and then decide if it's right or not. And if it's not right as a listener, then there's no point in trying to make it work. It just doesn't work.
Right.
So, you know, and there's so many different avenues you can go with sonically, so it's like, just pick another one and then see where it goes. And then, you know, you might surprise yourself and then you'll have a cool sound.
Right.
You know, so definitely.
So you do all of your mixing here, right?
Yeah.
You track primarily at, well, wherever you find appropriate or necessary for tracking.
Yeah, for the project, yeah.
And then you bring it all back home, because we're just at your home.
Yep,
And you mix right here on this iMac
I do.
with nothing but plugins.
With nothing but plugins, yes. I got my trusty Universal Audio Twin Duo, which I do take this whole rig mobile. And
Which
I do,
we've done for like the Phoenix Boys Choir.
Right, yeah, and so I'm limited to 2 preamps, but I like that limitation because, you know, 2 microphones really really makes things simpler, and it's more about the placement where you put the mics and stuff
It
like
focuses
that.
your direction.
It does, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, I got a little cloud lifter, mainly because a couple other people record vocals in here, and we have a ribbon mic, and they use the cloud lifter with the ribbon mic, and it just makes it sound better. But and I like you got the variable impedance knob, but that's as extensive as my gear gets. The cloud lifter.
You used to have more, and then you sent me a list of everything because you're selling it all.
Yeah, I did. I have no more room for it, and to me, like the simplicity of this desk, like makes it about the song. Like there's more focus to me on my session and what I'm doing and the workflow, with not a lot of clutter everywhere. So it's just nice to have like I use the crap out of this a lot. I mean, keyboard and mouse.
Which
and it's like this is I use these things like constantly. So having only what I use there, it's very like nothing's in the way. You know, there's no distractions of a million knobs to turn. It's just like it's what's best for the track.
It was cool to see you pick this guy up because I did a record, or I was asked to mix an album at a client's home. I had to go to them. He wanted me to mix it at his house, and he had a really nice mixing room built by one of the guys that builds a lot of studios here, and so it was a great sounding room, but it was all in the box, and it was using nothing but plugins, and I was a little nervous because I was like, man, it's been a while since I've mixed this way. But it was cool to have this because I could still, one of the things that I pretty much find necessary in a mix is I need to have a hand on the vocal. At the very least.
Sure.
You can't
Absolutely.
I don't see how anybody can not write a vocal, you know?
Right.
It's just my opinion, but like I needed that. And I like to be able to manipulate the level of the bass usually. And then sometimes like maybe like room mics on a drum set or something, or, you know, whatever the mix entails.
Absolutely.
But to be able to have fader movement was really cool. And yeah, I thought it was cool that you kind of picked up one of these because it definitely makes box mixing tactile.
Right.
On the very important, crucial level that it kind of needs to be.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I do balances on there. Like I'll do full fader balances, and I have no shame banking through faders. I don't care that there's only 8. You know, mostly what I'm looking for, you know, when I like to have the hand on the fader is kind of like the sweet spot of my 2-bus chain, and I kind of, you know, try to ignore the meter and kind of get the level of mostly the low end, because it's how the low end RMS information reacts with the 2-bus. I think that's a key sweet spot that you can't really go too much or too little there. So I like to be able to have, you know, either like a kick or a bass drum on a fader and mix it into the 2-bus till it just hits it right. And so you know, using that for balance, and then I'll kind of build the mix like around that foundation of that gain structure, I guess you would call it. But yeah, I mainly use it for that, and like rides, like you say, like it's crucial. Like I love having touch automation, and especially because this is like specific for Pro Tools. It's like having you know, your Pro Tools fader on touch automation, and just, you know, you got the level good, and you ride something up and you let it go, and the fader just goes right back to where it was.
Yeah.
And that's like I love that. So yeah, that's really important tool for me to have. That is that thing for sure.
Yeah. And I remember because like that I hadn't used the automation functions in Pro Tools for a long time for that reason, because it like kind of sucks doing it on a mouse and like you know,
absolutely.
So it was kind of cool to like turn that back on when I was doing this album for this guy at his house, and being like, haha, you know, like that's how it's supposed to be.
Yep.
Do you still, because you touched on it kind of, do you still calibrate your monitors to like the K system and mix into that at all?
I use K14 meters just to make sure I'm not like losing all my dynamic range in a song. But other than that, not really. It's more just like now I know what the meter should look like, and it's just, if it's not there, then something needs to be fixed. So I do use K14 metering. I don't calibrate my monitors to like 85 dB. I don't do that. I typically will monitor pretty loud at the start of a mix. I mean, first, like, I'll listen to the rough mix at a reasonable level and organize the session and get familiar with it and whatever. But when I'm ready to go and dive in, I listen loud because I like to feel the impact of the, like, you know, any EQ you're doing or the basic kind of, you know, cleanups, listen to something maybe in solo and be like, oh, that's what that sound is.
Right.
And, you know, getting that stuff together. I like to do that loud because you feel it. And so once I get the mix feeling good, then I'll just bring it really quiet. And when I bring it really quiet, I can hear the vocal. To me, like, you can't place a vocal with headphones, and you can't place a vocal loud. But just on speakers, when it's real quiet, you get the vocal right where it needs to be, like, every time. And so that's an important part for the monitoring. But I mean, like, as you know, I used to calibrate the monitors to I think 83 decibels, but I don't do it anymore. I just go up and down and up and down, and it's crazy. It's just that whole thing just doesn't really matter to me anymore about that.
Do you find that having, because I mean, the other thing I want to touch on was that you somewhat recently got a pretty nice monitoring system.
Yeah, I think that's super important.
Mm-hmm.
Super important, like with pretty much anything, is having accurate monitoring. It's like, it's trying to, like, paint with a blindfold on if you
Right.
don't. You know?
But do you find that maybe you've been able to ditch that process because you've got, you know, a pretty honest system now that you've calibrated to the room?
Sure, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Not really. Not really. It's, to me, because too, like, I'll take mixes to other speakers and stuff like that, and it's really just, like, making the speakers happy. Like, you know, like any set of speakers, like, you can kind of tell when there's things wrong with the room, you know, especially if you know a certain set of speakers. But the feel and the way that like the speaker moves and stuff like that is, like, I feel like just all speakers pretty much, like, if you get it right, like, all the speakers will react nicely to it, you
Right.
know, like, it's like the science of it. Like, if you have too much sub information in a speaker and you're pushing the woofer, like, almost past what it can do, like, you're blocking all the stuff that the speaker does. So if you can make it happy somehow, then it's just happy on other speakers, just because that's generally, like, speakers want to work a certain way, you know? I mean, obviously there's different speaker types and the amps and stuff like that, but, like, I mean, it goes to show when you get a really good mix down on a nice speaker, it'll sound really good on a cell phone, on a really shitty speaker. So does it matter? Maybe. I think having the accuracy has helped me place things in the mix better and stuff like that. But as far as the level of monitoring and how loud you go, to me, I don't think it's about that, like, the speakers themselves. I think it's just about the feel and what the speaker's doing when it's louder and what it's doing when it's quieter. And but yeah, I don't know.
I mean, I immediately noticed when you upgraded. I mean, you were working on speakers that are pretty notoriously rough.
But I was used to those speakers.
Yeah.
But it was the room that I was combating. That
Yeah.
was the tough factor. Was
Absolutely.
the room.
Absolutely.
You know?
Because, I mean, to be fair, I do know a lot of people that use the speakers you had. I'm trying not to say them because I don't want to. But, you know, I do know a lot of people that use them and successfully use them.
Yeah.
And if, once again, if you've got the room dialed to it, the power of that alone is huge.
Sure.
And maybe that's all I heard. But when you got this system, and, you know, these Genelecs have this new smart, right? The smart.
Yeah, smart active monitoring, I think that's what it's called.
Which allows them to, you can, you know, calibrate it and tune it to the room, and it's
Yeah.
a very good job. I mean, you showed me how it works, and it
Yeah.
does sound really good in here.
Yeah.
Especially considering the shape of room. That we'll take a peruse around in a second.
Sure, yeah.
But I was really impressed by like how well that worked. And then when I listened to the mixes that you had done on these,
Yeah.
tuned in the room
Sure.
at my house on my speakers, I was like, this is what you were missing beforehand. That I was
Yeah.
always saying like, no, it's missing this, it's missing this, and you were like, I'm not hearing it.
Right. No, absolutely, absolutely. So I mean, there's a lot. There's a lot that I think to that is it's just it definitely helps. Like
Yeah.
that's for sure. Like having that tuning and stuff to the room and being familiar with this. But even that aside, like I think another thing that's like helped with all that is just like working in live sound and stuff like that, and where just getting familiar with the frequency range and like what a good system should sound like, and like what what you're supposed to feel and all this stuff like out of a speaker. And I mean, yeah, the old set that I was using didn't have that, essentially, or I guess like from what I know now and see now and or hear now, like looking back, those speakers just didn't really have that like complete
Right.
frequency like view of everything like this system does. So I think that definitely helps do less revisions for me, but I've always been make it work with what you got. So even with the old speakers, it'd be like,
Right.
okay, yeah, I didn't get the bass quite right because of the limitations of the room, and I would just adjust it till it was like right, and I could make it work. But it's like, and again, like when you do make it work, to me, when it's done, it just pleases the speaker. It doesn't matter if it's there on a crap speaker in a crap room, it's gonna sound really good, and I think having accurate monitoring is the best way to do that, to get there, to get to where you can make all the speakers happy, essentially. Like, so
At least quicker.
yeah, quicker, exactly, right. It's like, it's not, to me, it's like not impossible to do it on an inferior system. You just have to do it right. It's just, it's weird. It's kind of, it's like you're painting with a blindfold on, but like, I'm sure there's blind painters that are incredible, and it's like, okay, so what's really the most important thing here? So I think it's definitely helped as a tool, but I wouldn't say it's like the reason that mixes get better. I think it's just determination to make them better.
No, fair
and
enough.
Stuff, and a lot of that.
Fair enough.
So.
There's definitely. I mean, my room isn't as technically correct as perhaps this room is because I haven't shot it. I'm definitely just really used to the monitors that I have now, because it was the first set of monitors that I heard that I was like, wow, these sound accurate to me.
Yeah.
Or like whatever that is, that they did it for me. And even in just doing these videos, we've only done, I think this is going to be the 6th one, but seeing everybody's different monitoring in these videos too, like to them, it's what works. And I think it's always interesting seeing the monitoring situations that different people have at whatever levels for whatever reasons. It isn't always somebody that maybe doesn't have access to huge resources,
Sure.
Like sometimes they'll have really interesting monitoring versus somebody that does, or whatever. And I think a lot of it still comes down to just subjective preference.
Right, yeah, exactly. And it's like whatever works for you and whatever makes it so that you make the speakers happy. I keep saying that, but I think that's so important, is just like however you can figure out how to make the speaker happy, like that's what translates, like the physicality of what the speaker's doing with your music. All it sees is frequencies at whatever range it's set to see, and if you have too much of one thing or masking on another, it's the speaker's not going to move the way that you need it to, and that's what doesn't translate to me to other systems. So I mean, it's not that one monitor is ever better than another. It's like you said, it's totally subjective preference, and whatever you can make work and you're comfortable with, and however you can get that feeling out of the speaker that makes it work, and I'm all about that, all for it. This was just it's the only way I could make this room really kind of accurate in a sense without breaking the bank. So
Yeah, because there's two ways to do it, you know.
yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Well, cool. Well, let's take a quick cruise around the room because
Sure.
you and two other people do a lot of demo work in here. And
Yeah.
I think there's some interesting stuff that I'd like to hear about.
Sure.
So let's
yeah.
do that.
Cool.
So here's the desk we were sitting in front of this whole time, and you've got it all the way down at the end of this hall, which
Yes.
we're in like a bit of a very long room, which
It's a very long room. Yes. It's it's a sunroom actually. It's an extension of our house, but yeah, it's a just long room. Everything spills that way, so it's nice.
yeah. So
yeah.
what else do we got in here?
Yeah, I mean, just some basic toys everywhere, stuff like this.
My keys and wallet on top of
This
that.
this is a weird, just like Goodwill piano thing. It's very noisy, but it kind of sounds like a harmonium. It blows air or something. It's got a little motor in it. It's fun. Guitars, ukuleles, stuff like that. MIDI controllers when we want to plug it into some virtual instruments and stuff like that. And then we got an upright piano that probably desperately needs to be tuned, but it's got some character to it. So yeah, we've like pulled this out and opened it up sometimes, just get like demo recordings. Mainly we use it for like demoing and stuff like that, just getting ideas, like writing. So it's more vibed towards writing than it is towards professionally recording stuff. But sometimes it makes it on the song. So
Right. Yeah.
the vibe is more important. So, and we play music here a lot. We jam, so we like to just keep it a very musical space. We let other people come jam too, play instruments. We got a drum kit, stuff like that.
Little workbench at the end.
Little workbench with a lot of work on it. And this fun little Baldwin here is cool.
Nice.
Yeah, it's got a little speaker in it. I think it goes pretty loud, actually.
They usually
here.
do.
Not that loud, but... Oh,
That one's loud.
that's pretty loud. So, yeah. And then,
Couple
just
guitars.
guitars everywhere and stuff like that. But I think the main thing, too, and I've done this a lot on sessions, is I've used percussion stuff because it's super easy to record with like one mic, and I'll do like overdubs, and this is where it goes into mixing sometimes forces me to be the producer. It's like if I feel like this, like I would benefit from having a track of a shaker in a certain part, I could just record that. So I have all these like over here in this room.
We're now entering the house part of the house.
Yes, the house part. This is the beginning. But anyways,
Oh, cool.
so
Like
I have
this percussion
yeah,
stuff.
all this percussion stuff, and a lot of it's like really unique and random and cool. I use a lot of this all the time on stuff, and a bunch
Is
of
this just
different
all your own like personal
tambourines.
collection?
Yeah, yeah, and then some of it's my roommates as well. And we have more stuff over here. This is actually Bobby's.
Of course.
Yeah, it's really nice accordion. But yeah, we got all this cool stuff, and like stuff like this. Like I just used this on a record, and it like made the song for me, and it was like just that sound. It was like a tuned thing, and it was tuned to the song, and it was so cool.
You never know.
Like sound bowls. I've used this so many times on. It just when it hits the key of the song, it's awesome. Like just little stuff like this.
Yeah.
So yeah, mainly I guess, as far as recording goes, this place is more for vibe and inspiration and writing, but like I've been known to sneak a lot of this stuff into mixing, like after the fact. Sometimes I'll record a shaker and not tell anybody, just sneak it in there just because it makes it better. And
Kind of do the
yeah.
Joe Barresi does like that, right? I think there's a triangle hit in every single record he has ever done.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I mean sometimes
That's
they're
hilarious.
sometimes they're quite buried, and like I've listened, I'm like I can't find them, but I'm pretty sure one thing that is true of all of his records, because he it's like a little fun requirement of his, is he's
Yeah.
like there needs to be a triangle hit somewhere on the record.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
But yeah, I definitely don't do that, but
We don't.
yeah, it's as needed basis. But
Yeah.
yeah, definitely there's a lot to play with here, so
Absolutely.
we definitely you know, have a good time and just try to make good music. I mean that's why we're all doing it anyway. We're trying to make good music.
No, yeah.
So
Very cool.
yeah.
And of course, the first thing we noticed walking in, the obligatory
Oh,
recording lane
Yeah, there it is.
that we
you
don't
know.
have.
This
at-
is
at my
this is
place.
this is non-friendly recording, and this is friendly recording. So, yeah,
Of course.
Yeah, color combination. So.
Nice.
Oh, actually, no, we're friendly right now, so we'll leave it friendly. But
Very cool. Very cool.
yeah,
Yeah. Well, thanks, Tony.
absolutely,
For having
my
me
pleasure.
over and
yeah,
showing us around and talking about mostly mixing, but like I said, that's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
fun stuff. I'd love to do it again sometime. So,
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching.